Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. At least 3 persons killed following collapse of building under construction in Rivers State. Pakistan's former President General Pervez Musharraf has died aged 79. Pope Francis ends peace pilgrimage to South Sudan by celebrating open-air mass attended by tens of thousands. My name is Okbayamuni. No fewer than 3 persons are said to have lost their lives when a building under construction caved in along Isiu Road, Mbodo community in Ikwere local government area of Rivers State. It was gathered that the dead victims were laborers working at the site of a 2-story building when the incident occurred yesterday evening. Some persons sustained injuries and were rushed to the hospital. In a statement, Public Relations Officer of the NSCDC Rivers State Command, Olufemi Aradili, said the cause of the incident was due to the use of substandard materials. The State Commandant of the NSCDC, Michael Oga, who was represented by the head of the Rivers NSCDC Disaster Management Rescue Team, Assistant Commandant James Ngene, visited the scene. Presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, says though the currency redesign policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, comes with pain in the long run, it has significant economic and social benefits, although the deadline for Nigerians to deposit their old Naira notes was shifted to February 10th. Many have found it difficult to obtain the new Naira notes. In a statement today, the former Anambra governor called on the CBN to expedite efforts to make the new currency available to small depositors and the unbanked in order to reduce the pains of fellow Nigerians, especially the underprivileged and those living far away from banks in the rural areas. Mr. Obi said the currency redesign is not peculiar to Nigeria, noting that it is an exercise that comes with some inconveniences and pains, but it has significant long-term economic and social benefits. Meanwhile, videos have surfaced allegedly showing an enforcement team of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, questioning officials of a commercial bank in Ado-Ekiti, Ekiti State, for receiving and ordering 6 million naira new Naira notes. Conversations in the videos shared online revealed that the bank officials said their ATMs had been faulty for 2 weeks. This comes as Nigerians continue to go through difficulties in obtaining the new Naira notes.
Yes, I'm currently at Sterling Bank Road, as part of this monitoring compliance with the guidelines by CBN. They have 6 million, which they've collected from the bank for almost 2 weeks. They've not disbursed any. They said they're here to configure the ATM. I do not know why that. And I brought attention to the penalty clause of 1 million per day, because they have 5 ATMs here, and so there's nothing stopping them from keeping. They don't have any reason for keeping this money. The zonal service manager, what's the name again? Tunde Onikwede promised that by 10 a.m. latest tomorrow, because I told him by latest 10 a.m. I'll be here. And I want to see this machine dispensing this money. This is what's the name? Olumide Olabi, service manager. And you? Okay, my name is Uwe. I'm a deputy director of CBN, right?
Outside Nigeria, Pakistan's former President General Pervez Musharraf, who seized power in a coup in 1999, has died aged 79. A statement from the country's army said the former leader, who was president between 2001 and 2008, died in Dubai after a long illness. He had survived numerous assassination attempts and found himself on the front line of a struggle between militant Islamists and the West. Musharraf's body will be flown back from the United Arab Emirates to Pakistan on a special flight after his family submitted an application to do so. The United States has shot down a giant Chinese balloon that it says has been spying on key military sites across America. The Department of Defense confirmed its fighter jets brought down the balloon over U.S. territory waters. China's foreign ministry later expressed strong dissatisfaction and protest against the U.S.'s use of force to attack civilian unmanned aircraft. U.S. President Joe Biden had been under pressure to shoot it down since defense officials first announced they were tracking it on Thursday. Afterwards, Mr. Biden commended the aviators who successfully took it down.
Briefed on the balloon, I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
In Europe, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that the situation of the eastern front line was getting tougher, with Russia throwing more and more troops into battle to break down Ukrainian defenses. Mr. Zelensky's comments came as shelling continued in the eastern Donetsk region, while an accident at the power plant in the southern region of Odessa left nearly 500,000 homes without electricity. Russian troops, who have been pushing for a significant battlefield victory after months of setbacks, have been trying to close their grip on the town of Bakhmut and are also trying to capture the nearby coal mining city of Voleda, also in the eastern region of Donetsk. Earlier in the day, Deputy Defense Minister Anna Malia wrote on Telegram that Russian efforts to break the defenses of Bakhmut and Lyman had failed. Lyman, which lies just to the north of Bakhmut, was liberated by Ukrainian forces in October. In the meantime, 2 Russian missiles have targeted the center of Kharkiv, hitting a residential building and a university's building. Kharkiv Governor Oleh Snebobov said on his Telegram channel that a fire broke out at the residential building on the city center. In a later message, he added that 4 people were being treated. Meanwhile, power has been partially restored in the southern city of Oseda after a fire at a damaged electrical substation had left nearly 500,000 people without electricity. The government said it will appeal to Turkey to restore power to those still affected. The structure was damaged by repeated Russian strikes. In other news, French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne has offered to relax the planned pension overhaul in France, seemingly to gain more votes in support of the retirement program amongst the Conservatives in Parliament. The proposal from President Emmanuel Macron's government will raise the pension age from 62 to 64 and extend the period when workers would have to pay for the fund. The overall is to keep the pension system from going into the red in the coming years, proponents argued. The relaxed proposal from Ms. Borne would allow those who started working before age 29 to still enjoy the previous retirement age, but she says she's still open to other suggestions. Some of the original reforms opponents are not satisfied with the revised proposal, however arguing that it does not go far enough. The proposal has proved highly controversial since it was first laid out, as France faced massive protests and strikes in response, which affected some of the country's most vital sectors. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
Kiriji War, also known as Ekiti Parappa War, was waged among Yoruba main ethnic groups which emerged from the ruins of the falling Oyo Empire that were desperate to replace the awesome powers hitherto wielded by the Alaafin of Oyo. The Kiriji War is defined as a conflict of confederacy and unitary political system championed by Yorubas of different socio-economic and political interests. The Ibadan military aristocrats felt the deserved a dominant position for saving Yoruba land from being totally submerged by the Fulanis by their victory in Oshobo War of 1840 and Ijaye War of 1862. Kiriji War, that took its name from the booming mortar sounds of European arms festered for so long because the Industrial Revolution in Europe provoked high standards of slaves. The 16-year Civil War also caused the emergence of new powerful kingdoms like Ibadan and the rise of powerful personalities like Oluyole, Ogumola, Kurumi, Latosha, Shodeke, Fabumi, and Ogedengbe. One of the fallouts of Kiriji War was the birth of creative political and leadership structure in Yoruba land that was a blend of federalism and autocratic monarchical system. Western Spring Television identifies Kiriji War as a watershed event. Named Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of its revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Western Spring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history. Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kuan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwifed the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history.
Back on Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now to the rest of the stories. Pope Francis has ended his space pilgrimage to South Sudan by celebrating an open-air mass attended by tens of thousands in Juba. He urged the congregation to reject what he called the venom of hatred and told them to lose no opportunity to build peace. He also pleaded with the country's leaders to focus on ending conflict. The mass, which took place at the John Karang Mausoleum in front of an audience of 70,000, according to estimates, was filled with cheerful worshippers waving flags and deep in prayer. The religious ceremony fell on the last day of the Pope's visit to South Sudan, which was his first to the country. Since it got independence in 2011, the country has been wrecked by civil war after the president fell out with his then vice president in 2013. South Sudan's civil war has caused widespread destruction and placed 4 million people The Pope, who visited the country alongside other Christian leaders, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and the moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, Reverend Ian Greenshield, has been on a peace mission and pleaded with South Sudanese clergy to raise their voices against injustice. In Europe, gale force winds and snowstorms closed roads and left more than 25,000 households in Serbia without power today, while falling trees disrupted traffic in neighboring Croatia and Montenegro. In Croatia, a red alert was issued for the regions along the Adriatic coast due to north winds estimated to reach 130 km per hour. Authorities in Montenegro's coastal town, Budva, want citizens to stay indoors after strong winds destroyed a school roof, brought down trees and lampposts, sank tourist boat, and disrupted traffic along its coast. Local media reported that more than 250 kilometers of local roads in Montenegro's southeastern Serbia were closed due to snow drifts reaching 2 meters. Bosnian authorities banned the use of heavy lorries in the mountainous regions due to snowdrift and icy roads. Turning to the Middle East, Iran's supreme leader has pardoned tens of thousands of prisoners, including many linked to anti-government protests. State media reports that the pardons by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei came with conditions. The pardons come on the eve of the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Demonstrations erupted last September following the death in custody of a 22-year-old woman held by Iran's morality police. Mahsa Amini was arrested for allegedly wearing a hijab improperly in violation of Iran's strict dress code for women. Authorities have portrayed the protests, which are still continuing, as foreign-backed riots and at times have responded with lethal force. Human rights groups say more than 500 demonstrators have been killed, including 70 minors, and around 20,000 have been arrested. Protests around the country have slowed considerably since the first of the hangings began. Tens of thousands of Israelis have gathered for a fifth week of protest against controversial judicial changes proposed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Protesters in central city of Tel Aviv braved heavy rain for the protest, carrying blue and white Israeli flags and chanting slogans against Mr. Netanyahu's justice minister. The proposed changes, which the government says are needed to curb overreach by judges, have drawn fierce opposition from groups including lawyers and raised concerns amongst business leaders, widening already deep political divisions in Israeli society. Critics say Israeli democracy will be undermined if the government proceeds in pushing through the plans, which will tighten political control over judicial appointments and limit the Supreme Court's powers to overturn government decisions or Knesset laws. Mr. Netanyahu, who is on trial for corruption, has dismissed the protest as a refusal by leftist opponents to accept the results of last November's election, which produced one of the most right-wing governments in Israel's history. In the meantime, people in the Republic of Cyprus have begun voting for the eighth president in the ethnically divided island's 63-year history as an independent state. Some 561,000 Greek Cypriots are eligible to vote in the election after a campaign dominated by issues such as corruption, labor disputes related to accelerating inflation, irregular migration, and a deadlocked peace process with estranged Turkish Cypriots who live in the self-declared Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. With 14 candidates in the running, opinion polls point to a race between three front-runners. Cypriots will expect the new president to quickly move to buttress an economic battered by Russia's war in Ukraine and its knock-on effect on the cost of living. A 16-year-old girl has died after being mauled by a shark in a river in Western Australia's state capital, Perth, after she jumped in the water to swim with a pod of dolphins. Police said they were called to the scene of the attack near a traffic bridge in the Swan River in the Fremantle Port area of Perth. The girl was pulled from the water with critical injuries and she died at the scene. Police believe the victim was with friends and jumped off a jet ski to swim with a pod of dolphins in the river when the shark attack occurred. Authorities were not sure what kind of shark attacked the girl. The last fatal shark attack in Western Australian waters was in November 2021, when a 57-year-old man was killed by a great white shark at Perth Port Beach. Elsewhere, former British Prime Minister Liz Truss has said she was never given a realistic chance to implement a radical tax-cutting agenda by a party. In a 4,000-word essay in the Sunday Telegraph, Ms. Truss stood by her plans to boost economic growth, arguing they were brought down by the left-wing economic establishment. They are the first public comment the ex-Prime Minister has made on her resignation, but she said she was not blameless for the unraveling of the mini budget. Business Secretary Grant Shapps, who was appointed by Ms. Truss as Home Secretary during a final week in office, said she clearly did not have the right approach to taxation. Speaking to the BBC, he said her desire for lower taxes in the long term was correct, but inflation should have been lowered first. Ms. Truss' brief time in power, 49 days, made her the shortest serving Prime Minister in UK history.
We'd already, at this stage, this is in the last 6 or 7 days of the government, we'd seen the impact on the markets. I wasn't part of her initial administration.
But did you agree with her vision? Because you took a job as Home Secretary. It's one of the biggest jobs in the government. I thought actually at that point in time there was a moment of sort of almost national duty to be doing one of the most important roles in terms of the security of the nation, and very much took it on that. But I also sort of wished her luck in, your question is, in my heart, do I think we should have a lower tax economy? The answer, yes, absolutely. No, my question is, in your heart, do you think that Liz Truss's approach was the right one?
Well, clearly it wasn't.
And now to some sports stories. Victor Osimhen said it was a great privilege for him to make history for Napoli as he scored 2 goals in today's 3-0 Serie A victory over Spezia. Napoli took a while to find a breakthrough at the Stadio Pico, but they were eventually gifted the opener by an Akadush Reka handball for the Kiva Kvaratskhelia penalty. The Georgian then set up 2 goals for Osimhen, a towering header on the deflected cross, and Robin Mattia Caldara to roll across for his teammate for the 3-0 scoreline. The Nigerian becomes only the 4th Napoli player to score 16 goals in the first 21 Serie A games of a season, following in the footsteps of Luis Benicio in 1955-1956, Edison Cavani in 2012-2013, and Gonzalo Higuain in 2015-2016. The result puts Napoli temporarily 16 points clear at the top of the table, awaiting the game between Inter and Milan.
Napoli have surely got the job done here. This time the error by Caldara. Kvaratskhelia unselfish. Osimhen precise with a good start from Spalletti, who's used his bench so effectively this season. Oh, that's been given away again. They're in again. It's Osimhen again. 3-0. Another costly error from Spezia, but again punished by a ruthless Napoli.
Goalkeeper David De Gea says contract talks with Manchester United will end in a good way. The 32-year-old Spain international, who has made 517 appearances and almost 12 years at United, is out of contract in the summer. He's now free to agree pre-contract terms with an overseas club. United beat Crystal Palace 2-1 at Old Trafford in the Premier League yesterday to extend their winning run at home to 13 games in all competitions. De Gea says he has been in very tough moments for the club, but now he's enjoying it more. Nigerian singer Tems was amongst the guests invited to the annual Rock Nation pre-Grammy brunch. In a viral social media video, Tems was dressed in a white gown, was seen conversing with Rock Nation founder Jay-Z and his wife Beyonce. The pre-Grammy brunch was held at a private residence in Bel Air, Los Angeles. The 65th annual Grammy Awards will be held later today, and music lovers all around the world are full of expectations. Beyonce has the highest number of nominations for this year, with 9 entries, followed by Kendrick Lamar with 8, while Adele and Brandy Khalil have 7 each. Tems is nominated in the Best Melodic Rap Performance and Best Rap Song categories, and nominations followed a role in Wait For You, the 8th song by Future featuring Drake. Meanwhile, Burna Boy is nominated in the Best Global Music Album category, again for his latest project, Love Damini, while his 8th song, Last Last, also bagged a nomination in the Best Global Music Performance category. Before we end Spring Global, here's a recap of our top story. No fewer than 3 persons are feared to have lost their lives when a building under construction caved in along Ishewu Road in Bodo community in the Kure local government area of Rivers State. Pakistan's former President General Pervez Musharraf, who seized power in a coup in 1999, has died aged 79. Pope Francis has ended his peace pilgrimage to South Sudan by celebrating an open-air mass attended by tens of thousands in Juba. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Okpayamuni. Thanks for watching.